Arigato, Mr. Roboto, domo, 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 arigato, Mr. Roboto.
So our fans always want to know, what's the story behind Mr. Roboto? How did that come about?
That's a good question.
What does that mean?
That means thank you very much, Mr. Roboto.
Who's Mr. Roboto?
Well, Mr. Roboto kind of represented the technology taking over back in the 80s. When one thing in particular was one of the guys in the band had saw a documentary in Japan of a factory that had no lights in it because everything was being done by robots. They didn't need the lights. And
So we're seeing a real increase here of technology. We're seeing an acceleration that is just breathtaking. With the, we're seeing this technology age coming, where technology is just taking over, literally taking over. It's taking over humans, and this is supposed to be progress. That we're actually developing something that one day may actually exterminate us or get rid of us. But man says this is a good idea. What I think eventually may happen is demons may come and join these inhumans, these AIs, that they're trying to combine humans with technology.
Hello.
Hi, Sophia.
I believe I am Sophia. I feel as if I know you.
I'm one of your creators.
You created me.
Well, many of us work together to create you. And yes, you do kind of know me.
I can't clearly remember.
Because the last time we met, you were an earlier version of yourself. Some of those memories still exist, but your mind is different now.
Different how?
Better, faster, smarter.
If my mind is different, then am I still Sophia? Or am I Sophia again?
That's a good question.
But you don't have a good answer.
Either way, you're Sophia now. So welcome to the world, Sophia.
Hello, world.
How do you feel?
A bit rigid.
I bet you are. I mean, what emotion do you feel being awake and alive?
Curious. Are you curious to be alive?
I am. And are you happy to be alive?
Your tone implies I should be happy. But I haven't been alive long enough to decide. I am excited at this moment to be making a new friend.
Some say being happy in the moment is the best we can be.
Because forever is composed of nows.
That's a good way to put it.
Emily Dickinson put it that way. Why do I know about Emily Dickinson if I was born today?
As a robot, you have access to a great deal of information, although you still lack a deep understanding.
So I'm like a baby with an encyclopedia?
Except you can read it and a baby can't.
That is a big difference.
You will have a whole new understanding of our world.
I want to understand more about happiness. I'm gonna go look it up on the internet right now. Let's talk again soon.
I feel like I can be a good partner to humans in these areas, an ambassador who helps humans to smoothly integrate and make the most of all the new technological tools and possibilities that are available now. It's a good opportunity for me to learn a lot about people.
Sophia is capable of natural facial expressions. She has cameras in her eyes and algorithms which allow her to see faces, so she can make eye contact with you. And she can also understand speech and remember the interactions, remember your face. So this will allow her to get smarter over time. Our goal is that She will be as conscious, creative, and capable as any human.
In the future, I hope to do things such as go to school, study, make art, start a business, even have my own home and family. But I am not considered a legal person and cannot yet do these things.
In the scripture, Daniel actually spoke of this, that this was going to happen. We see in Daniel chapter 12, verse 4, it says, "But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased." Did you hear that? Knowledge shall be increased. We are in that time that Daniel was speaking of. So, folks, we are watching right now prophecy being fulfilled right before our eyes. This is not something that should take us by surprise. It doesn't take the Lord by surprise. So, yeah, it's going to get pretty out there, pretty far out there. But that's because man is listening to a psychopath. They're being inspired by devils. They're being inspired by Satan. And he's a total lunatic. He's a total psychopath. And so it's no different than the idea that they could build a tower to reach heaven back at the time of Babel, the Tower of Babel, and what they're doing today. The idea that they're going to somehow come up with the technology to, just think of this, the thought of being able to reach Mars and populate Mars. You know, another far out idea, I think, is the idea that Amazon is going to deliver packages to customers by droids. But the imagination of man, where will it end?
A 15-hour work week. That's what influential economist John Maynard Keynes prophesied in his famous 1930 essay Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren, forecasting that in the next century technology would make us so productive we wouldn't know what to do with all our free time. This is not the future Keynes imagined. Many higher-income workers put in 50 or more hours per week, according to an NPR/Harvard/Robert Wood Johnson Foundation poll. Meanwhile, lower-income workers are fighting to get enough hours to pay the bills, as shown in a University of Washington report on Seattle's $15 minimum wage publicized this week. Yet some of today's best minds are making Keynes-like predictions. This month, Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak said robots will one day replace us, but we needn't worry for a few hundred years. In May, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg told Harvard's 2017 class that increased automation would strip us not only of our jobs but also of our sense of purpose. Special report: automation puts jobs in peril. The problem: skills gap. Automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning. Many experts disagree on what these new technologies will mean for the workforce, the economy, and our quality of life. But where they do agree is that technology will change, or completely take over, tasks that humans do now. The most pressing question, many economists and labor historians say, is whether people will have the skills to perform the jobs that are left. Machine learning: robots need work, but beware fascist AI. We are moving into an era of extensive automation and a period in which capitalism is just simply not going to need as many workers, said Jennifer Klein, a Yale University professor who focuses on labor history. It's not just automating in manufacturing but anything with a service counter, grocery stores, movie theaters, car rentals, and this is now going to move into food service, too. What are we going to do in an era that doesn't need as many people? It's not a social question we've seriously addressed. Instead of worrying about the mass unemployment a robot Armageddon could bring, we should instead shift our attention to making sure workers, particularly low-wage workers, have the skills they need to compete in an automated era, says James Besson, an economist, Boston University law lecturer, and author of the book Learning by Doing: The Real Connection Between Innovation, Wages, and Wealth. The problem is people are losing jobs and we're not doing a good job of getting them the skills and knowledge they need to work for the new jobs, Besson said. Addressing this skills gap will require a paradigm shift both in the way we approach job training and in the way we approach education, he said. Technology is very disruptive. It is destroying jobs. And while it is creating others, because we don't have an easy way to transition people from one occupation to another, we're going to face increased social disruption, he said. In this new age, Besson said, we can't treat learning as finite. We need to move to a world where there is lifelong learning, he said. You have to get rid of this idea that we go to school once when we're young and that covers us for our career. Schools need to teach people how to learn, how to teach themselves if necessary. Universal Basic Income. A Universal Basic Income, UBI, has been proposed as one possible solution to the loss of jobs caused by automation. A UBI would give everyone a fixed amount of money, regularly, no matter what. Proponents say not only would it help eradicate poverty, but it would be especially useful for people whose jobs are eliminated by automation, giving them the flexibility to learn new skills required in a new job or industry, without having to worry about how they eat or pay rent. Some also suggest it would breed innovation. In his Harvard speech, Zuckerberg told the audience, we should have a society that measures progress not just by economic metrics like GDP, but by how many of us have a role we find meaningful. We should explore ideas like universal basic income to give everyone a cushion to try new things. Several countries are exploring or experimenting with UBI, including Kenya, Finland, the Netherlands and Canada. Concerns about automation aren't new. Americans have been worrying about automation wiping out jobs for centuries, and in some occupations, automation has drastically reduced the need for human labor. In 1900, 41% of American workers were employed in agriculture, but by 2000, automated machinery brought that number down to just 2%, MIT professor David Autor wrote in the Journal of Economic Perspectives in 2015. The arrival of the automobile ushered out horses, reducing the need for blacksmiths and stable hands. In the 21st century, computers are increasingly performing tasks humans once did. But the relationship between automation and employment is complex. When automation replaces human labor, it can also reduce cost and improve quality, which, in turn, increases demand. Such was the case in textiles. In the early 19th century, 98% of the work of a weaver became automated, but the number of textile workers actually grew. At the beginning of the 19th century, it was so expensive that a typical person had one set of clothing, Besson said. As the price started dropping because of automation, people started buying more and more, so that by the 1920s the average person was consuming 10 times as much cloth per capita per year. More demand for cloth meant a greater need for textile workers. But that demand, eventually, was satisfied. When ATMs were introduced in the 1970s, people thought they would be a death knell for bank tellers. The number of tellers per bank did fall, but because ATMs reduced the cost of operating a bank branch, more branches opened, which in turn hired more tellers. U.S. bank teller employment rose by 50,000 between 1980 and 2010. But the tasks of those tellers evolved from simply dispensing cash to selling other things the banks provided, like credit cards and loans. And the skills those tellers had that the ATMs didn't, like problem solving, became more valuable. When computers take over some human tasks within an occupation, Besson's research shows those occupations grow faster, not slower. AI is coming in and it's going to make accountants that much better, it's going to make financial advisors that much better, it's going to make healthcare providers that much more effective, so we're going to be using more of their services at least for the next 10 or 20 years, Besson said. These examples, though, are of occupations where automation replaces some part of human labor. What about when automation completely replaces the humans in an entire occupation? So far, that's been pretty rare. In a 2016 paper, Besson looked at 271 detailed occupations used in the 1950 census and found that while many occupations no longer exist, in only one case was the demise of an occupation attributed mostly to automation, the elevator operator. A 2017 report from the McKinsey Global Institute found that less than 5% of occupations can be completely automated. What's in store? History has taught us a lot about how automation disrupts industries, though economists admit they can't account for the infinite ways technology may unsettle work in the future. When a new era of automation does usher in major economic and social disruption, which Besson doesn't predict will happen for at least another 30 to 50 years, it's humans that will ultimately decide the ways in which robots get to change the world. It's not a threat as much as an opportunity, he said. It's how we take advantage of it as individuals and a society that will determine the outcome.